Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining me here today as we get to talk about one of my favorite subjects, comic books. My name is Jose. I love comic books. I love talking about them. I love sharing them with you. Feel free to follow me on social media if you would like. Links are in the description below. I've also posted a link to the Marvel fan site that'll have plot synopsis and character bios for this issue. The Uncanny X-Men 167 from 1982. Great cover here as Cyclops carries Professor Xavier, and the X-Men are looking down, giving us something that might not be, something might not be right. Does the Professor X die? We'll have to see. Now, real quick, I do have a playlist, several playlists. So, I have a Chris Claremont X Universe playlist where I cover everything in reading order. Started with Giant Size X-Men 1, which I read as Classic X-Men number 1, and worked my way through now. I've also got in there the New Mutants, where they go. So like I said, everything's in reading order. I actually just have an X-Men playlist by itself. So if you're not interested in some of the other extras that are in there, like the Marvel Age, I have on the X Universe ones, we have the first four Marvel Fanfare, issues where they went to the Savage Land. If you're not interested in any of that, you can just go into the X-Men playlist by itself. I also have a New Mutants playlist. And then I've got tons of other little playlists where I just put the issues in tiny little, what would you say, like a little trades, you could say. So, all right, here we go. Great cover. I love Paul Smith. I wish he would have stayed. Now, this, I do have both the issues, both the classic X-Men and the regular X-Men one. This is Adam Hughes taking over as the regular cover artist. However, I actually discovered this story as a trade paperback. I discovered this through this little nifty trade paperback with a cover by Art Adams. This came out in 1989. So I actually, this was my second trade paperback. The first one I had was, no, my third. The first one was the Dark Phoenix Saga. Then I had The Greatest Battles, which included Days of Futures Past, and then this. There wasn't very many ways back in the day to get collections, so to see things like this was pretty cool. So this is how I discovered the stories that are going to be covered in here. So this picks up right after New Mutants number 3. And we got the X-Mansion. We even have the diving board here. And the New Mutants are watching Magnum P.I. We got Cannonball, Sunspot, Wolfsbane, Mirage, and Karma. Cypher and, what is her name? Ileana, Magic, are not members at the moment. And so, the professor got, and I explained it in the New Mutants, but just in case, the professor believed the X-Men to be dead, so he got himself a new pair of students to train. And suddenly, the X-Men come home. And so the Goldilocks syndrome, or Who's Been Sleeping in My Head. Chris Claremont, writer, Paul Smith, penciler, Bob Wycek stayed, or is it Wycek? Stayed as inker, and Glynis Wein has helper here to the color, and Tom Orzechowski, I believe he remains as a letterer. He had a gap, a couple issues gap, but he is the letterer, I believe, until Claremont leaves. Louise Jones is still the editor, and Jim Shooter is still the editor-in-chief. But eventually, Louise Simonson, as she's going to marry Walt, will... It's kind of funny. She gets married, becomes Louise Simonson. Glynis Wein divorces and becomes Glynis Oliver. So, the X-Men are like, who the hell is in our house, basically. So, all right, and of course they don't know that these are the X-Men. So Cannonball is going to rush at Colossus here. And of course, we get a couple things here. It's a good thing I'm pretty much invulnerable as Cannonball. I feel as I just slammed full tilt into the mount. So he's from Kentucky. So instead of saying I, he says am. It's a good thing am pretty much invulnerable. So kind of like a southern twang here. And Cyclops says, these kids have guts. They obviously don't recognize us. Could it be that Charles hasn't told them about the X-Men? Why the hell did you guys come in blasting in there? You freaking scared them. And now he's like, I don't know. I wish we had time to explain, but the slightest delay could prove fatal. And so Cyclops is using his optic, and he's like, we mean no harm. Hit the floor. Stay out of our way, and you'll be all right. So here comes Kitty here. So Kitty's upstairs. She's like, well, they didn't see me. They don't know I'm up here. And then she's like, what if we're wrong? What if about the professor? What if we're making a terrible mistake? So, of course, magic is able to pull a person's nightmares and make them life. They just got done with the brood. So, and you'd be proud of me. I even made the brood comment on the New Mutants uh, about how much I dislike the insectoid body of theirs. So here comes Rain Sinclair as Wolfsbane. She goes to Nightcrawler, and Wolverine punches Sunspot here. And so, kind of hitting him because remember, he's got Sunspot is super powered when he's in that form here. And of course, Wolverine has his skeleton, so it's hitting him hard. And so, this is a great pose here of Wolverine going up the stairs. Love it, love it, love it. Charlie may be robbing the cradle, but he hasn't lost his touch. If these kids had the skill to match their spunk, they'd be dangerous. And Karma's of cold, stop! And she's using her power here. What? Lady, get out of my head. And she's like, he's breaking my hold on him. It's impossible. That's in French. That has never happened before. And so, Wolverine, of course, has had training. And so, here comes Kitty. We're going to get a little bit of a recap here. During our final battle with the Brood, the Queen boasted that one of her royal embryos still existed. Wolvie figured it had been implanted on Professor Xavier. If he's right, when the thing hatches, it'll absorb the Professor's psi powers and become virtually unbeatable. It and its children will prey on the human race until they overrun the planet. And so, and you can see Professor X with his head down here. And she continues here. The brood instinctively seek out genetically superior hosts for their eggs. Kitty thinks that might be why the New Mutants are there. Of course, we know that is not the reason, but... And so she sees the professor, she sees human, and she doesn't... This is one of the brood's guns that she's holding here. And now she's like, I don't have to shoot. And she's like, hey, wait a minute. How come he's asleep? If that scrap in the living room wasn't enough to wake him, my thoughts should have done the trick. I'm trying to shield him like he taught me, but I'm so excited, I'm scared. I'm probably doing a lousy job. And she says, Professor, and he smiles and he says, you should have heeded Wolverine's injunction, child, and fired. Your hesitation will cost you dearly. Oh no, and she does fire. And Sunspot loved the borderless panel here. He goes, that sound coming from upstairs. A blaster. Kitty, says Wolverine. Don't worry, Shan, I'll handle this brute. And he goes after Wolverine again. He owes me a rematch. And punches Wolverine, but of course, look at this. How badass does Paul Smith draw Wolverine? God, I wish he would have stuck around more than just a year. What could have been? Oh, Jiminy. So Wolverine says, nice try, boy, but no cigar. And he just punches him. Notice no claws are out. And Nightcrawler teleports out of the way, knocks these two out. And and suddenly Kitty is thrown here, and Cyclops yells for her. And look at this, and here comes that. Look how freaking Paul Smith is so good. Um, Look at this. The angle here, it just looks so menacing here. And the professor says, "Greetings, X-Men. What a pleasant surprise. I have long hoped for such a meeting, but despaired of it ever coming to pass. You need not fear for the youngling. She is beyond help. Fear rather for yourselves." And so you can see here the professor is changing, and the X-Men are like, shoot, we are screwed. And the professor is turning into the Brood. And so a young Brood queen. "Does my form displease you, X-Men?" says the queen. "If so, that can be speedily remedied by your own morphosis or your death." And Cyclops shoots at her and says, to coin a phrase, "Want a bet?" And just there goes the queen. And Colossus, Lennon's ghost, and he's got poor Cannonball there. "The Brood Queen, we have arrived too late. The boy who attacked me looked as young as I did when I joined the X-Men. I hope I did not hurt him. The creature is not even stunned. I must not let it escape." And the Brood Queen says, "And how will you stop me, human, when my mental powers enable me to read your every thoughts, to counter your plans the moment you conceive them?" So, out come the X-Men, and I believe this is Mirage and Karma as well following them. And so Danny Moonstar says, were we seeing things that Professor X turned into some kind of monster, the same kind we fought before? And that was, of course, in New Mutants #3, which I covered right before this. And Wolverine says, "Stay out of this, you kids. We'll handle it." And she says, "Forget that, Buster. Who do you creeps think you are anyway?" And Wolverine says, "The X-Men." And Karma says, "But you're supposed to be dead." And Nightcrawler teleports up here and says, "Cyclops, by the tree line." And the Brood has Colossus here. And the Brood Queen says, "Your cause is lost, X-Men. For all the vaunted strength of his armored form, Colossus could no more prevail against me than Cyclops, nor will the rest of you fare any better." And she tosses poor Colossus. And Wolverine kind of jumps on him a little bit and says, "Sounds like sensible advice, the kind I was ignoring since I was born. We've come a far piece for this scrap, sleazy, and we don't intend to lose." Now, look at this image of Wolverine. Oh my goodness. Do you almost see that Jim Lee rendition on that cover? Look at that. Oh, it's just gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous here as Wolverine goes toward the Brood Queen. I love Paul Smith. I really, really, really wish he would have stuck around. Can you imagine Paul Smith going all the way through the John Romita Jr. era? So, she avoids getting slashed by Wolverine, and she yells, "Fiend, for all that I will rend the flesh from your unbreakable bones. I will feast on your living heart," as she tosses him. And Karma says, "We have made a terrible mistake fighting those who came to save us. Perhaps I can set things right by possessing the creature." Of course, the X-Men did attack first, but the poor people, they feel bad. "It's thought as alien, as evil as the one we fought earlier. They're more horrible than I can bear. No, it is reflecting my attack back on me." And then she screams in pain here. And so Of course, the Brood Queen is kind of gonna run away here. The wound will heal, but it weakens me. I must find a place to hide and restore myself. Let them think victory is theirs. They will soon learn the error. And she goes, eh. As she's running away, here comes Binary. Um, and the Brood says, what is that? And of course, Binary answers, I hate to disillusion you, monster, but from us, there is no escape. And she punches the Brood back here. And you can see Storm using her powers here. I'm gonna kind of, this is actually a 24-page issue, so I'm going to kind of get a little bit here. You can see Storm using her power on the Brood Queen here, freezing her, and the Brood Queen has fallen here. Binary says, nice work, Ororo. The queen isn't moving. Is she dead? Says Nightcrawler, who has teleported there. And Cyclops says, if she isn't, Kurt, she soon will be. And Storm says, I could have slain her with a lightning bolt, but I could not bring myself to do it. And Wolverine says, no shame in being what you are, darling. I'm the killer of this team, remember? And he is off to go make the killing stroke. But Cyclops gets in his ways. And he says, not this time, Wolverine. I was the first X-Men. It's my right, my responsibility. And he says, forgive me, Professor, if there was any alternative. And the professor, kind of still in there, says, there is none, Scott. Professor, yes, mental transformation incomplete. Been resisting all my might. Shock of Storm's assault enabled me to gain upper hand. Eventually, the Brood persona will overwhelm me. That must not come to pass. For the good of Earth, of humanity, kill me, Scott. I beg you. You heard the man, says Wolverine. He really... And Cyclops, you can see here, he kind of pushes him back. I also heard Phoenix play this riff before she died. I never had a chance to save the woman I loved. I'm damned if I'm going to watch Charles Xavier go the same way. So long as there's hope, no matter how slight, the X-Men fight to preserve life, to create rather than to destroy. Any objections? Now, I love this part. Lots, says Wolverine. None, says Storm. I just love it. Lots, none. And Cannonball says, so that's Cyclops. And Mirage is like, wow. So, all right. So we are now aboard the Starjammer. And, of course, they got Moira McTaggart because, hey, she's got to be everywhere. Which is kind of funny because she was in Scotland in the last issue, but now she's here. So... And so Cyclops talks with his father, and he's just feeling antsy. And out comes Sikorsky? Or Sikorsky, I don't know. And with McTaggart, and he says, is it over? And Sikorsky says, over? Ha! Begun, Cyclops, we barely have. And Moira says they cannot reverse the metamorphosis, but Sikorsky thinks he can take the tissue samples collected from Charles when he was last aboard and clone him a new body. Then we transplant his mind from one to the other. Is such a thing possible? Asks Cyclops. Longshot is. Choice there is none. Permission given. Procedure has begun. And so, you can see here, Illyana is reunited now with Peter again. And Kitty is still unconscious and wakes up and gives them both a hug here. And look at Storm. I shared this vigil too, kitten. Yet your thoughts are of your best friend and the man you believe you love, where once they would have been of me. It is only natural. Change is an essential part of nature, and this one I have long expected. But now that it has actually happened, why do I feel so alone? Go get a boyfriend, Storm. That'll help. So, it was a joke. By the way, in case somebody's out there, women don't need men. I was a joke. And so she goes, Wind Rider, stop pitting yourself. I had no right to assume the role of parent, though I did so gladly, but I quote before, albeit in blissful ignorance, and will do so now. Kurt, am I intruding? She asks. Never, dear lady. Your presence is always welcome. So, flatterer, she says. That's me, the silver-tongued, blue-furred devil, whose delight is in making people laugh. And so, look at the New Mutants up in space, just looking at all the stuff. Look at how they're, um, so and he says the jury's still out on whether they will accept me or not. It's one thing to watch someone like me on cinema or television screen, quite another to share dinner table with him. And Storm says Kitty was frightened of you at first. She got over it. So will they, says Storm. And so we can see here two people are above her, and of course it is Corsair and Cyclops, father and son. So Cyclops is saying the waiting's driving me crazy. If there was if there was something I could do. In many ways, that Charles Xavier is as much his father as you. And Corsair says, I know, I envy him, but the hand he had in shaping your character, Scott, and making you the man you are today, I owe him a debt I can never repay. And Cyclops says, what are your plans? Will you remain on Earth? And he says, for a while. There are people to see, years to catch up on, but those years are the main reason why, in the end, I'll return to space. I've been away too long, Scott. This isn't the world I remember. I'm decades behind the times, yet centuries ahead of them. Christopher Summers, Major U.S. Air Force. I'm no more. I'm Corsair. Earth isn't my home anymore. The Starjammer is. So the Starjammer, of course, is their ship. When you leave, will you take me with you, says Cyclops. If that's what you want, then gladly. And Corsair continues, but in the meantime, I've run some checks. Anne, your mother's folks are dead, but mine are going strong. Interested in meeting your grandparents. And he's like, I have grandparents? Most everyone does. What are they like? Only one sure way to find out. You bet I'm interested. Just try to keep me away. Look at them. There's the two share a very nice hug. Oh, Paul Smith is so good. I wish he would have stayed. Oh, I really, really wish he would have stayed. That would have been a hell of a run if he could have stayed all the way to the end of Jr. Jr.'s run. Man, wouldn't that not have just been so awesome? And so, uh, Corsair says, wouldn't think of it right now, though you too big and grown up to give your old man a hug. So, and so now we have Gladiator, Hepzibah, and Raza here. Raza calls out to Corsair, and Corsair's like, so much for tender moments. What's up, Raza? We have a guest, Christopher. Of course, it is Gladiator here. And Cyclops wonders what he's doing there. And Corsair says that's a good question, considering he swore never to walk these decks until he'd seen the Starjammers dead or enslaved. He isn't a man to lightly break an oath. You're a long way home. Is this a social call or business? And he says, Pirate, I demand to see the Majestrix, Empress Lilandra, at once. And Corsair says, on my ship, Lord Praetor, you do not demand of me, you ask. And Raza's like, thou hast been ill-mannered, cousin. And Corsair's like, have care, renegade. We, like you too, Imperial, care to argue the point. Another time, Lady Hepzibah, with pleasure. Corsair, I crave an audience with my Empress. So, and of course, here we have Lilandra. She's wondering about Charles and if Sikorsky can save him. That their love is sundered by circumstance and duty. And then, of course, she thinks of her sister Deathbird, who is the one who gave her and the X-Men to the Brood. She thinks Deathbird might actually be the Empress now, unless everybody kind of betrayed her. So she goes, do I have the stomach to lead another rebellion? So, of course, here comes Gladiator, and he goes, Majestric, I bring grave news. And so, And so um, Gladiator says, there will be no peace so long as Deathbird rules. She is unfit, Lilandra, as mad in her own ways as your brother Decan. So it looks like only Lilandra was the nice one, and her other two siblings were psychopaths. And she says, "We are, I fear, a mad family. It simply hasn't touched me yet." And of course, we get a sort of setting up John Byrne's story with the Fantastic Four. There's more upon arrival here. I unintentionally came into conflict with the Fantastic Four. I later learned that they had recently encountered Galactus. Majestic, the Shatterer of Worlds, has had returned to Earth to die. And she's like, then his story is finally ended. Would that it were. With the intervention of Reed Richards, Galactus has restored to health, given a new herald, and set free. And she's like, that meddling, unmitigated fool. And she shatters her cup. So now we are at the Baxter building. And there's Reed and Sue. And look at this. Beautiful. Just off like this, just in the panel. Oh, so creative. Is Landra, and she's basically going to say that what he has done is terrible. Yes, I'm paraphrasing here. And if Galactus destroys any world that is precious to the Shi'ar, they are going to pay. And so here comes Ben and Johnny and says, consider this a fair warning, Terrans. And then she's gone, and Sue's like, good riddance. So this will set up John Byrne's story in the Fantastic Four, which hopefully you guys all know about. So the trial of Reed Richards. So um they say, well, I hope he was impressed because you don't have a planet and a world. So but here comes Professor Xavier, and they have fixed him. And not just that, but they fixed him even better. They fixed his legs. Of course, his legs were broken. And so he is now standing, and he says, for the first time in years, I am whole again. But then he's like, ah! And what it turns out is there's psychic pain now from because there were no legs, and now there is. So he's going to have to work on basically getting his legs up. So they help him to sit down, and look at Lilandra giving him a nice little kiss. And so Moira says they'll have him in defeat in no time. And he says, I'll hold you to that. And then he sighs. So we're in the last page here. So he says here, I have rarely witnessed so happy a day, to see those I feared lost forever return home alive and well, to be alive and well myself. There are more blessings than any man deserves. As you X-Men have no doubt noticed, I have admitted new students to the school. I apologize for the circumstances of your initial meetings. I hope you'll become friends. And Cannibal's like, sounds great to us. One tussle with Colossus was more than enough for me. So, and Colossus agrees, and he says there is an additional benefit to the introduction of the mutants. At last, Kitty will be able to study with children her own age. And she says, says who? I'm an X-Men. And Professor X says, that was an oversight, an error on my part. You are too young, Kitty, and too little is known about your powers. In the X-Men's primary role of combating evil mutants, the risks are too great that I cannot allow. As soon as we return to Earth, you are to leave the X-Men and join the New Mutants. My decision is final. And everybody looks. Next issue's Kitty's reaction, or Professor Xavier is a jerk. Oh, goodness gracious. Now, real quick, we are going to also cover this story. This is a short cover from X-Men Special Edition #1. Now, this was a big reprint of Giant Size X-Men #1, but we, of course, are not going to be paying attention to that particular story because, that's already been covered. It had some, but there was an extra here that you see here, Secrets of the Mansion by Chris Claremont and Dave Cockrum. So, here we go. So, Kitty, so the title is A Day Like Any Other, and you can see Kitty is in the gym here. After that whole fiasco here, Chris Claremont with Dave Cockrum and Hilary Barta, and Orzakowski does have help with the letters, and we have a different colorist here. Louise Jones is still there, and Jim Shooter is still there. But Louise Jones is going to leave soon, and Ann Nocenti, I think, will take over. But not yet here. So, all right. And so we can see here that she is, like I said, kind of working through stuff, and she falls here. And here comes Ileana. She goes, Kitty. She goes, I'm okay, Ileana. I'm more angry than hurt. That was a pretty dumb stunt. And Ileana says, no argument there. Thanks a lot. Hey, what are you doing here? I thought I was the only one home alone. And she says, I've been exploring. So keep in mind that her and Ileana are kind of besties. They became besties during that whole Belasco thing that happened on X-Men 160, which again I have covered on a playlist. And Ileana says, this place can be pretty intimidating, even scary to someone who doesn't know their way around. And she says, I felt the same way when I arrived. Do you want a tour? Says Kitty. You bet I do. Great. I need some things from to keep me from moping around, feeling sorry for myself, and this will be fun. We'll start here in the danger room here. So we'll get some exposition as to, what is the danger room, who are the X-Men, her phasing powers, so all that kind of stuff here. So lets them know that the danger room can create anything in particular. Remember, she was not involved in New Mutants 1 through 3, so she hasn't seen all this stuff before. So to her, this is all new. And so all the other stuff that, where the danger room is located. Again, check out the Marvel fan site, as I mentioned before. That'll give you much more than what I'm really going to cover. I'm just kind of showing this story so that you get, just because it's gonna be real quick, and I just figured I'd include it in this video rather than making its own little video. Talk about Cerebro, Storm's attic, stuff we've seen. So this is more for the reader. This, of course, used to be Jean Grey's room. Nobody else has taken it. And then here's Scott's room. A picture of Jean. A typewriter. And this would be a word processor, not a computer. People didn't have computers, personal computers back then. So we got a picture of Mariko, Wolverine's girlfriend, and Carol Danvers, his sort of bestie. So this is Wolverine's place. You can see his hat and the little bonsai tree. Here we got Kurt Wagner's room. And so this is a tiny little pterodactyl that Nightcrawler has. And so this is, of course, Colossus's room. He's an artist, and he's been painting here. And so they get this whole thing about them dating, and she's like, he's 19, and he's like, and Ileana's like, you're 14. Yes, I know. Oh, goodness gracious. I know. I've already said my point. I'm going to keep moving on. So the girls are going to go swimming here. And so they talk about the pool, all these other stuff. But, of course, they're being watched. And they go, splendid. The children are gone. The mansion is last hours. I will monitor their progress. The rest of you begin work. We cannot be certain how much time we'll have. So be as quick as you can. If all goes well, they will return to a welcome they'll not soon forget. So the girls are going to like a pond here to swim, to look at the other thing that takes it to the tunnel. And she's like, the water was cold. So And of course, this is where the hangar is, where we keep all these other vehicles. Charles Xavier has to be a billionaire and a half to have all this stuff here. So, all these other gadgets and all this stuff. So, again, this is kind of pretty cool for the non-reader that doesn't follow X-Men here. So again, more about the town, and all of a sudden someone's broken into the house, and here come the kids. They're gonna find out. They're riding this little cart that's gonna take them through the tunnels, and here they go. They open the door, and it's a surprise party. Happy birthday, Kitty! And here we have the X-Men and the Starjammers here on this. This is a really well done panel here. And so, happy birthday, kitten, says Storm. Wow, chocolate cake, my favorite. And of course, we got Stevie Hunter there. And Kitty says, whose idea was this? She says, Ileana, from her sojourn in Limbo, she knew what it was like to miss a birthday. She didn't think it was fair for her best friend to miss one as well. And Nightcrawler says, this price part, though, was Logan and my suggestion. So, and of course, there's Colossus, so they have a kiss. And the Kitty's all happy for the birthday present, and of course they're like, she says, Ileana, she had the best day of her life. We get the end. So hope you enjoyed this short story here that, again, I didn't really cover much of it. It's just really about technical stuff, and it's kind of just an introduction to the X Mansion and all that kind of stuff. So all right, so hope you enjoyed this issue, or issues, I should say. So, X-Men 167, Chris Claremont, Paul Smith, and then that special edition by Cockrum. Like and subscribe. I do thank you for listening. Goodbye.